For those who are new here, I've been using Blender for about 20 years. I'm a game developer, software engineer, MOCAP expert, and most recently a writer and narrator. Go ahead and check out my latest book that I just released, Duelers, on paperback, Kindle, or Audible. When it comes to MOCAP, I have a lot of insight on it because I've been using it intensely for about 3 years. I was actually skeptical at first, and I even worked at a company about 8 years ago that had version 1 of the Smart Suit Pro that Rokoko's put out without the gloves. They rarely used it, and it was for those reasons that I at first came into motion capture with a lot of skepticism. I got the training and experience doing 3D animation myself, kind of manually keyframing. It would have to be really worth it for me to get into it. And eventually I came to that point where I wanted to get into motion capture to kind of augment or maybe even take over the animation pipeline for some games that I was making with a heavy amount of cutscenes and character animation. So yeah, I've had a full mocap suit and headgear set up for about 3 years, and I've added another suit in the past 2 years. I was extremely motivated to make it work for a specific project for Double Demons. If you've been following me, that's the main project that I've been working on. If you're here for the Smart Gloves 2, you can skip to this point in the video. I'm just going to kind of give my overall impression of motion capture and what it's been like for me as a creator in the specifically 3D character space. I'm more on the cinematic for games or for movies end of things like short films, more so than the VTuber space. So here's some pros. It's one of the coolest game dev technologies you can own, right up there with like drawing tablets, a good GPU. It's really cool to have one and to be able to bring those out to different projects or like game jams and things. It is one of the fastest ways to bring friends into game development in a way that's very accessible, but kind of gets a lot out of it quickly, which is pretty rare. Normally, with most programming or art type skills, it takes a lot of time investment or like already relevant skills to be able to do something. So putting on a suit and like being goofy immediately works and is something you can do with almost anyone as long as they're comfortable putting on the suit. When it works, it is pure euphoria. I've laughed so hard while in the suit and other people in the suit just being goofy and having fun and dancing around. So it's already completely worth the money for me, and I have a lot more plans of what I'm going to do with it, whether it's for making asset packs or working more on some game projects. This can be a little bit of a double-edged sword, but it motivates you to stay in shape. You really notice the how your body is when you put on the motion capture suit. It's tight, especially on the straps in those areas. So it reminds you of how you feel in your own body. And if you need something, especially as a game developer, to kind of push you to exercise, this is a form of exercise, getting up and running around more so than sitting and standing at your desk. It can be a huge boost to morale getting started on a project. Sometimes it's just really overwhelming, especially if you're working in the 3D character space, whether it's for short films, trailers, games. Being able to just put on the suit and map out some actions really quickly is something that's like a sort of cheat code hack that you can't get almost anywhere else. Animating can take hours and hours before you realize that you want to do something different. I can say from experience working on cinematic cutscenes, the high sunk costs makes iterating extremely painful. And a lot of what makes things good is kind of doing it over and over again. That's one of the really great things about the suit is it only takes a few minutes to get it set up and going. And if you want to redo a scene or just scrap a scene entirely, there's like almost zero cost to doing that. Here's some of the negatives. It's a lot of money to spend on something, so it can feel like a lot of pressure to use it, and you can feel bad whenever you're not using it for extended periods of time for whatever reason. Two, I kind of touched on this earlier, but it can be non-flattering to wear. It looks especially flattering on guys more so than girls because where it puts the battery and kind of like hand pocket pouches is like at your belly, so it hides that well. Another difficult thing is when it's not working for some reason, that can be really crushing. Sometimes you get really excited for something, so if anything doesn't work, it can kind of take the wind out of your sails. When it does work, it's amazing, but you want to set your expectations and kind of test ahead of time so you can be reasonably sure that it's going to work when you're ready to do what you want to do. And I highly recommend experimenting with what you wear under and over the clothes. I've tried the motion capture suits totally naked, with underwear, with normal clothes, and with compression gear. I personally prefer the compression gear as far as the most comfort. Naked is also really good for breathability, but you do have to wash it more often. And it is slightly annoying, even though it only takes like 10 minutes or so to pull out the wires so that you're safe to wash it. It is something that you tend to want to avoid when you can. Another con is you can kind of get wrapped up in the spirit of motion capture, which is a time-saving device. You get caught over optimizing, and sometimes like a dirty fast recording that you put out in 5 minutes is 90% of the value that you could get by like recalibrating or moving the Coil Pro around or like turning things on and off. So sometimes you're just better off just taking whatever the recording gives you. Maybe like a hand is like offset by a little bit, but you can make the adjustments in post really, really fast. And something I've definitely got caught up in is like, well, what if I didn't have to do any post-production editing at all? And sometimes you do get really, really crisp recordings like that, but obsessing over needing it to be that when, if you have any of the accompanying skill sets to make those edits, at the armature bones later on, you really should consider that, what is your goal here? To get the perfect motion capture recording or to move the project along? Another thing that's kind of, two sides of the same coin is it's limited by your acting skill. You can use friends, but it's limited by them as well. So you want to remember like, okay, do I like performing? Me, I grew up in a family that was very deeply immersed in musical theater and, different plays and musicals. So acting has always been a huge part of, I guess, life for me in one shape or another. So putting on the suit and being willing to, be emotional or vulnerable or silly or goofy or intense is something that I like doing. And if you don't like doing, then you should recognize that that will be a challenge to overcome. Another thing to be aware of is the Spy Kids effect. A lot of times you're just kind of in your room using the motion capture suit, so you're just kind of acting to a blank wall, and that can be really bad. In fact, I used to call it MOCAP face when you're watching yourself on the kind of real-time stream, sort of what's going on here. And it's really cool to watch yourself, but that can take you out of focusing on the realism of acting out like whatever scene you're trying to do. This can be helped by playing some videos that are like similar or related to what you're going for. Or, you take a recording, you watch it, and then on watch back, you can kind of give yourself that direction, like, okay, I should do it more this way instead, like bigger or, use more hand gestures. One more thing to be aware of is it's so open-ended, and being able to do anything and everything can be paralyzing. Making lists of animations you need ahead of time is key to making the best use of this technology. Pro tips: get the bigger sizes of both the gloves and the suit. Even though the correct size is a little bit more flattering, and I've tested this, the bigger size is better for wearing for long periods of time, and you get a better range of motion out of it. I've seen also other people who are using the motion capture suits, and they typically do wear bigger sizes than they need because it's nice to have that a little bit extra wiggle room, and the straps still make it tight enough so that the sensors will work correctly. I recommend cutting off the sleeves to the wrist right past the final sensor that kind of goes around the forearm area. The reason this is here on the suit is it's an artifact from a pre-gloves era of rokoko suits. The comfort's way better after you cut it off, and most people are like rolling this up, and that significantly makes it less comfortable to wear for like long periods of time. And I like being able to wear it for hours if I want, if I'm testing and then checking, testing, recording and testing back and forth a bunch of times. Write down a list of specific animations that you want. Also keep links ready to go for rapid fire, like video references. Having a projector and anime clips or movie references is really great. As you can see behind me, it's kind of nice to break it from them having to crowd around the screens of your computer. If you can set that up, I highly recommend it. Remember, even animations with some recording issues or calibration issues has tons of value as reference for manual work. A lot of times you could re-record it in the suit, and that is easy and fast, but you've got the 90% of what you need from it. So just kind of keep moving forward is my recommendation to get the most out of it as possible. Here's what I think of the second iteration of the gloves from Rokoko. The buttons are a total game changer. Being able to click to record and stop and then hold press to recalibrate is amazing. Rokoko deserves a massive pat on the back for this. I was definitely trying to implement these features myself on my own custom tool set, and this is a far superior version of this that, of course, is reliable because it's an actual physical button. The color coordination sync is nice too. The tracking is noticeably way better. I have actually 2 sets of the first version of the gloves and then 2 sets now of the new gloves, and I can say the new ones are far better. Do you like animating characters yourself? Do you want me to animate characters for you? All right, hit me up. Any animations for 1 to 2 person scenes?